Welcome to Harder Than It Looks, Parking Uncovered, a podcast that illuminates real solutions to common problems within the parking industry. I'm your host, Brian Wolff, CEO of Parker Technology, and in each episode, I'll introduce you to real parking pros that will bring their own tips, tricks, and best practices to manage what we all know is harder than it looks, parking a car. Okay, on the show today is Greg Brewer, just recently named the president and CEO of Amano McGann, Inc. AMI is a Roseville, Minnesota headquartered subsidiary of Amano Corporation Japan and is a leading provider of software service and equipment managing payments, access control, and yield optimization for parking facilities and valet operations throughout North America. My guess is that anybody listening to this program probably knows Amano, but here's a little bit more. AMI has 275 employees, 23 branches in the US and Canada, and a large dealer network. The company differentiates itself with extensive service presence, in addition to having the best reporting software in the industry that property owners and managers depend on to optimize their parking operations. We'll get into this, but briefly, Greg worked for two of Amano McGann's largest dealers for 15 years before joining the company directly in August of 2017 as Regional Vice President of Operations. Greg and his wife, Amanda, live in Elkin, North Carolina, with their three children, Karis, Kanan, and Donnie. For my part, I had an opportunity to have dinner with Greg last month at IPMI, and what struck me was his conviction to take care of his people and do the right thing always. So I'm honored that he would take the time out of his, what is probably a maddeningly busy schedule to spend some time with us. Greg, welcome to Harder Than It Looks.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me.
That's great. Okay, so to kick things off, what I like to do, that's the reason I didn't read a bunch of your bio, is I like to hand you the mic and I want you to go back as far as you want to go. And again, based on our conversation at dinner, I would love for you to go all the way back so that people can sort of hear the Greg Brewer story, because it's a great story. And so go back as far as you'd like to go and then sort of bring us up to the modern day and how you got to where you are at this moment. So the mic is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Brian. So I'll go way back. So I was born in Elkin, North Carolina, the same city I'm talking to you from today. To my mother and father at the time worked together, and we lived in a small house down a little dirt road in Elkin, North Carolina. And my mom and my dad split up when I was fairly young, about 3 years old. And then it was just me and my mom, and I became the man of the house at a fairly young age. And so I watched my mom have 2 or 3 jobs at a time, as a small child, and got kind of dragged around here and there, and I would sit on Saturdays at whatever job she was working, so it instilled in me from a very early age that if I didn't know anything else, I knew that it was going to take hard work to get anywhere in life, and being willing to do hard things and not necessarily relying on others, but certainly just putting your best foot forward. And over time, my mother had married a couple different gentlemen, and then one man came into my life when I was 10 years old. And my father, my biological father, was kind of in and out of prison and made some bad choices along the way. And this other man that came in, Norman, who I still call my stepdad, even though he and my mom aren't together still. He came into my life when I was 10, and much of the same. I watched him, work really hard in manufacturing. North Carolina's long been was a manufacturing state. So he worked in a manufacturing environment, leading teams of people. I remember when Hugo came, trees were all over the neighborhood. His first we'd make sure everybody was safe. And then next it was like, okay, how do I get to work? Like, I got to get the chainsaw out here and get the truck out of the driveway. I'm going to work. You guys will be fine. It's over. And that taught me a number of things with him. He was a very brave man. He was a very hardworking man. And he was also not afraid to try things. If there was anything broken, he'd try to fix it. And if there was anything at all that we needed, if he couldn't fix it, he would figure out a way for us to have it. And so he taught me not only continuing that hard work sort of mentality to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, so to speak. But he also taught me that, you got to be willing to try things, even if you're not completely sure. And this is pre-Google, right? Yeah. Where he was not afraid to try anything. And that sort of became my mindset. I got my first job when I was 14 and a half. As soon as I could get my worker's permit, I was working at a local restaurant and washing dishes. And I saw the cooks and I thought, well, you know what? I'd like to learn how to do their job. I think I could do that. And I started cooking in the restaurant, probably 16 or something like that, and worked there through high school. And fast forward a little bit, get to the college years, and I met what at the time was a little short girl that bounced when she walked, and Amanda. And Amanda was going to school to be a teacher. And at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life other than follow Amanda wherever she went. So this was back in 1997. And so she was at a community college, and that's where I was. She was going to go on to be a teacher and go to Appalachian State. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'll go to Appalachian State. I like Boone, like to ski and snowboard. So I ended up there, and I went to see the whatever they call it in college, the person that would help you with figure out your course, where you wanted to go. And I really, at that time, still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that the fastest way I could get out with a degree was business, because I'd had a number of business courses already at the community college. So I chose the business route. And through the course of that, I was working for a gentleman that was selling used cars, and not your typical used car salesman on a lot, but he had relationships with Enterprise and all these other type of car companies, and we would go and talk to them. And next thing you know, we'd be out in their lot looking at cars that nobody really wanted. And we would take the cars that had a lot of miles, or maybe wasn't running exactly right, or whatever the case might have been. And we would take those, the things nobody else wanted or weren't really ready to be, to go to someone else. And we would take those things and fix them up a little bit, resell them. So through the course of that, I met a gentleman named Henry Allen. And while I was in college, and Henry Allen, all I knew about him at the time was we sold him a bunch of Ford Ranger pickup trucks that he used for service vehicles and Astro vans and these, the types of things that were, back in the late 90s, early 2000s were typically used for either installation or service vehicles in what I became to know was the parking industry. But at the time, all I knew about Mr. Allen was that he had a lot of money and had a lot of businesses and was pretty successful. So I graduated from college with a degree in computer information systems, business degree. And at the time I was working for this gentleman still. I was doing some construction as well with another friend of mine that I had, striping parking lot. I was doing all kinds of different things just to make money. I always enjoyed having the money so that I could take Amanda out to a nice dinner. But anyway, I started thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I've got, my wife, or girlfriend at the time, was going back to get her master's degree, and I just graduated. My dad at the time was going back to prison for what was life in prison, and he ended up dying in prison in 2006. Another story for another day. But long story short, I knew at the time that I didn't want to do what I was doing forever. So who did I know? And at the time, I knew Henry. He was like, the most successful person that I knew outside of this guy that I worked for in the car business. And he's in Charlotte, North Carolina. I lived in Elkin. I went to see him one day, and funny side story on that. I'm sorry for the side stories, but I love stories. So I went to see him, but I didn't just go to see him in my best shape. I went to see him, and a couple of days before that, I had gone to sight in a rifle. If you might know anything about hunting, you got to have that rifle keyed in, or you're not going to make a good shot. So I was doing that, had my eye too close to the scope, and it came back and recoiled. So I went to see Henry the first time, and I had a big shot at all, which of course led him to, if anybody ever knew him, led him to a story about hate to see the other guys, all those guys.
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, he was like, boy, he always called me boy. Boy, you ever thought about selling time clocks or parking gates? No, sir. I have never once thought. Well, at the time, I said, Mr. Allen, Nick called him to his face. Mr. Allen, I don't think I would be a good salesman because I really want to understand what I'm selling. And I think I would be a better salesperson if I understood more about what I was selling. He said, great, I need service technicians. So he said, when can you start? So I ended up starting with him January the 2nd of 2002 and as a service technician, and was riding around, changing gate arms, learning from various installers and technicians that he had on his staff. Fast forward a little bit, about 6 months later, he came to me one day on Friday. He said, boy, hired you to be a salesman. I think you've learned enough here. You've done some stuff in the time clocks. You've done some stuff with parking gates. If you want to be a salesman and you want to sell our time clocks and things like that, come in Monday morning with a tile. So I came in Monday morning with a tile. I go to see Steve St. John, who was the sales manager at the time, and I came in, had a tile, and he's like, boy, what you got a tile for? I'm like, well, I'm a salesman. And he's like, you are? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, you see all those literature racks over there? I said, yes, sir. He said, go get some of that literature and go make some calls. And I was like, okay. And so that was my training. So I did exactly that. I went and got some of those pieces of literature, and I started driving down various roads and going in businesses. There was always a saying Henry had, people can hide their time clock in the back, but they can't hide their parking gates. So, but anyway, and so I would go into these places looking for the hidden time clocks, and talk to people about those, come in carrying an MJR 8000 under my arm with a box of time cards. And then that progressed, and I started selling other types of time and attendance systems with badges, hand readers, fingerprints, and all that kind of thing. And did that for exclusively selling time and attendance systems until roughly 2006. And then an opportunity opened up in Greensboro, North Carolina, where Mr. Allen said, Greg, I want would you consider being a manager in our Greensboro location? And I said, well, I've never been a manager before, but if you think I can do it, I'll give it a shot. And he's like, okay, go up there. Yeah, go up there and you can start up there. So I went in, nobody in the place knew that I was there to be the manager. So figured that out. Was there for years, a couple other bridges added to me over time. And then unfortunately in 2012, Mr. Allen passed away. And through the course of my life, he was I would say the single most influential male figure.
Yeah.
Up to that point in my life. And still yet, I keep a picture of him on my desk. So, so after that happened, some things changed within the organization, and I learned a lot. I was always taken care of there, but decided that I would move to Texas and work at Associated Time, and spent a number of years there. And then some things changed within Amano, and I was offered the opportunity to come work for Amano directly. And at the time I came in, I was the VP of operations for a region, what was called at the time the Southeast region, and learned right off the gate a number of things that were different from on the dealer side of our business. For years, I'd always been attached to Amano, working directly for Amano, and I came to realize real fast some of the differences that were seen on the dealer side versus directly to Amano, and embraced a lot of those differences, and trying to make as big of an impact as I could every day. And various other things changed within the industry and at the organization. I was offered an opportunity to move into an expanded role where I covered the southern United States. If you drew a line across the states, I had everything south, and Ryan Nestor had everything north. And fast forward a little bit more, an opportunity arose for Senior VP of Sales and Operations after Steve DeMarco came in as president. And I moved into that role. Been was in that until just fairly recently. And then one day I was invited to a call and asked if I would be willing to be the president come July 1st. And now it's July 24th. So 24 days in, here I am.
24 days in. So I enjoyed the story. I got a little more of the story this time than I did over dinner, but I enjoyed the story just as much this time because talk about grit and determination and showing up and being pulled along by mentors. Like all of those things are so important. And then the other thing that I try and tell young folks young folks, listen to me, kids, when I try and tell kids all the time, it's people in their young professionals in their 20s. You do not have to have it figured out, right? Just show up, do good work, and people will pull you along if you do really great work. And your story is just a testament to that. So that's awesome. And then Mr. Allen, was it? No. Yeah, Mr. Allen. So have you read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
No, I have not.
Okay. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad story about, of course, you have your biological father and even your stepfathers, and then there's Rich Dad. So Kiyosaki, I can't remember, Guy Kiyosaki, he wrote this book and he talked about how his rich dad taught him about business and taught him about the value of owning things, and it helped him truly understand the value of accumulating assets and all of that. And it helped him obviously build financial wealth. So you got a rich dad and you've got a poor dad, which sounded like you had both or several along the way. So congratulations for that. So you mentioned Steve DeMarco. So my first question, as you're 24 days into this thing, it seems to me from the outside, so I've been in the industry now 9.5 years. Steve was president, for 5 or 6 years, right? It seemed like he was the right guy at the right time. He's a steady hand. He values stability and quality and all of those things. And that was really something that obviously that Amano needed when he came in. My question for you is, what is it that Amano is signaling to the market now by naming you president? What is it that they think will take them to the next level with Greg Brewer? What do you think?
Well, that's a good question. So I'll walk backwards just a little bit if it's okay. So
yeah, of course.
Steve came in February of 2020. And you know what happened in March of 2020, right?
I do.
So when he came in, it was, we had been just full transparency. Amano, I think this is no secret to the parking world, and certainly no secret to anybody that lived it. Unfortunately, customers and employees, and including me, living through some of the darkest days of Amano. And you fast forward to COVID, and we were just getting ready to have to go through a pretty massive restructuring at the time, and right when Steve came on board. And then COVID happened, and in many ways, that obviously helped the optics of what we were having to do a bit, because other folks were doing things specifically because of COVID. But that was some of the hardest things that was definitely, if I look back and say, what was some of the hardest things that I ever did, was go through that time, because I didn't necessarily I never have associated people with numbers. And because I understand, I typically know if they're married, if they have kids, what they like to do. And so it was all those things, and the emotion of having to walk through some of that. And Steve was a very steady hand. And through the course of his time here, he's very measured in how he does things. And I think I've learned a lot from him on that. And he's going to stay around in an advisor role through the end of the year. Congratulations, Steve, on your retirement, if you ever listen to this.
Yeah, but congratulations, Steve.
He's actually out at Glacier National Park this week with a little vacation with his wife. So hopefully he's having a good time there. But to get to your question of what I anticipate doing, and I thought a lot about that. And for me, it's not about coming in and changing everything we're doing, because what we're doing is working. For me, it's more of of trying to continue to find ways to refine things and continue to find ways for us to provide a better customer experience. And this is not saying that we don't, but I think as any organization, continuous improvement is a big deal to me, and not settling for just, well, we're better than we used to be. That only lasts for so long. And that's one of the things that I'm always very cognizant of is that I've been in the industry long enough to see waves of Amano, waves of of our competition, waves of new disruptors that come into the marketplace. So I'll put it this way, very succinctly, and I've said this too. My hope is that we can continue to build ourselves, the strength of our organization, caring about one another, caring about our customers, so that not if, when that wave comes and things change, we're stronger when we're there, and we're more able to stay the course. And for me, it's truly being customer focused in all of our decision-making processes. We have core values as an organization, and we should make every one of our decisions based upon those things.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So I've always been fascinated with the concept of how leaders in large organizations, and AMI is pretty big, how you're able to sort of sustain a culture with so little contact on down the line. So you're 24 days in. What's your sense for how you'll sort of maintain what was good, but begin to refine what could be better? Like, what's your thought process for doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll break it into a couple parts. So one of the things for me personally that I've always tried to do is whatever role I've had, I still, not as much as I should. So if anybody listens to this, you're like, well, you haven't been to our office in 6 months. We haven't seen you in a year, but so we have a lot of branches scattered about. So it's very challenging. I would love to go to everyone very, very, very frequently and really understand, be on the ground myself, see things with my own eyes. But unfortunately, I don't get to do that as much as I'd like, but I still do a fair amount of that. As you could imagine, we're not that big at 275 employees. We're not that big of an organization, but we're pretty spread out. It's not like, folks are all coming to a central kind of spot. So that brings its own set of challenges. And what ends up happening, as you could imagine, is it splinters into these mini cultures.
Yeah.
Okay, where there may be a really awesome culture here, but it may not feel the exact same here. And I'm not looking for, it doesn't necessarily have to be like McDonald's or I'll use Chick-fil-A is probably a better example of that. Yeah. But certainly from my standpoint, I want it to be more of that for our customers' sake. And I want it to be how our practices, how we go about doing things. So if we have to move resources around within our branches, we're able to, folks come in and they understand we do things the same way. And that's been a big push for us over the last number of years, is having those standard operating procedures in all of our branches. But to get to the heart of it, you can have all that, but if the culture's not there, that's where it becomes a challenge. And so for me, it's breaking down those walls of us versus them when it comes to a branch versus quote corporate. In some real sense, we're all corporate. Every single person that gets a paycheck from Amano McGann we're all getting a paycheck from the same place. Right? So we're all, so it becomes more of, the way I like to say it is that all of our conversations need to be more, we are doing this versus a corporate, then we're waiting on them, or there's a they kind of thing, versus we need to be more of a we. And so and I came in with that one goal in mind that I got a lot of them, but one right out of the gate, that if we can get to we, that's where we need to be.
Yeah. I love that.
So you can deliver, and I'll have shameless plug. I've got my Amano one. Sure. Yeah. Shameless plug is, having that one mission, right? We have one mission in this organization. So
yeah, that's great. Well, you did mention in your backgrounder that you strongly dislike turf wars and excuses and inaction. So how are you going to nip it in the bud? What's the mechanism for that? Or how will maybe more importantly, how will the customer feel it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, how will the customer feel that you're eliminating turf wars and this inaction that sometimes takes place because you've got factions locked up against each other?
Yeah, just to be completely clear on that, and it is a fair way to put it, but it's not that there's internal wars, right?
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
a little, but there is that us and them mentality that resides within any organization
Yeah, of
on
course.
some level,
Yeah.
right? But how to go about doing that. One of the things that I've found that helps, no matter in whatever you're doing, is having a level of trust. There's an overused word called transparency that people often will use, but
Sure.
to get to the heart of what that actually means. So for me, it's establishing scorecards that are visible to the other team members, that are visible to the different groups. Long has there been measures in place that are very visible for sales, right? You say, nothing happens till somebody sells something, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so clearly there's always going to be this pressure that's going to be felt from the sales and operations teams, but it's more of understanding that where there's an accountability aspect.
Yeah.
And so accountability and transparency and really, I think breeding the trust between teams and having that empathy for what the other is doing goes a long way in an organization.
Yeah, for sure. So to be clear, just so that all of your Amano colleagues won't think that you're characterizing them as having wars, those are my words, not his. I may have extrapolated and or glossed over it, but I get it 100%. For me, so I love the scorecard and the visibility for sure. It really is about helping people appreciate that if we help our neighboring branch, it helps us all. And that sometimes there's grace and there's power in sacrifice and there's power in reaching across the aisle and helping your brother do their job better. And then the second thing is what I hear you also translating. First of all, I love nothing happens until somebody sells something, right? So that for me, that was one of the things that I was digging for a little bit with the transition. Although Steve DeMarco was a pretty good salesperson, even though he probably would never claim to be a salesperson. But I wondered if there was a sales gear that Amano One was trying to get to. But for me, for Parker, we can sell things, but if our operations team doesn't deliver it with super high quality, it creates massive headwinds that we just cannot overcome. And the converse is true. The tailwinds that great operations and flawless execution creates for the sales team is really magic. And so we've captured that, and I can hear that. I think that's where you're headed for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about Amano and where you're going to take the company. So everybody's focused on innovation and everybody's focused on customer experience. What's next for Amano? Where are you guys headed? What are you really excited about for the company?
That's a good question. So I'm excited about a number of things for our organization, and we just having a conversation yesterday about a few of those things. So I'll start by saying I'm excited that when going back to when we first started down the Amano One road, I'll say one of the things that I said, and that probably people like y'all have heard that so many times from Greg, is that for me, when the magic really happens is when folks that aren't on your payroll start selling for you.
Yeah.
And that has started happening. And so for me, there's a combination of continued stability and having a bulletproof, stable back end that is key to growth. You can have all the features in the world. You can solve all the world's problems, but if you can't have the reliability to back it up, that is always going to be an Achilles heel. So for me, it's ensuring that we have focus on maintaining that stable back end as we continue our growth, and where we've brought some different people on board just recently, and and have some interesting things going on with AWS that are going to be kind of game changers for us as we get down the road. And then the other thing is just from an execution standpoint, ensuring that we are giving that same level of care everywhere, and that all of our decisions, whether it's how we're going about our installation, how we're going about handling any type of customer need, are all through the lens of taking care of that customer first. So it's really continuing our process of putting that customer first and ensuring that we're all filtering everything through those lenses.
Yeah. Okay. And so then invariably customer friction happens. They didn't get what they thought they were going to get. Tell me about your perspective on how it ultimately either gets solved before it gets to you, or it gets to you and enables you to sort of empower the team to solve the problem. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's one of the areas where, for me, you're right. There's, no matter what, there's always going to be situations that come in that's going to be like, somebody's unhappy because of something. And for me, it's the way that I want the team to operate is that first thought should be, okay, how do I take care of this customer based on how I would want to be treated if this was happening to me?
Yeah.
And if they make those decisions based upon that, it may not be the same decision that I would make or their boss would make, but for me, it's empowering them to go ahead and make that decision. And if they're making that decision, it's not immoral, it's not unethical, it's not illegal, and it's the best thing that customer could have, I'm going to stand behind that decision. If things do escalate and they do get to me, and sometimes that happens, and that's one of the things that I feel like it's probably going to be, there's probably going to be a little more of that for me than some other leaders that have been in our organization, because I've been at a lot of different levels within the company and made a lot of different relationships along the way with customers. So, sometimes it'd be like, hey, I'll just call Greg if we have a problem. And that's happened in the past. And I don't get any joy out of that. And what I mean by that is I certainly get joy out of talking to the customer and helping them with their problems, but I don't get joy out of people being bypassed. I like it when, and often I'll push those calls back down to the people and allow them to do their job. And we have very competent people in all aspects of our organization. And I want to get out of the way and let them do their job, because likely they can do their job better than I ever could. And I want to make sure that they're given every opportunity to show the customer that, because really what I've found in all of my doings is that what an upset customer really wants is somebody that cares and somebody that helps them get to some sort of solution that they and their customer oftentimes think is acceptable. And so for me, what I've always seen is, if that person, whether it's me or anybody down the line, can help them get to that solution, the escalations they'll quit escalating, because if you empower them to do their job and they know their parameters, they know what good looks like, and they know what their guardrails are.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. And it's going to be quite powerful that you've probably seen almost every job at Amano. At least you probably have, except you probably didn't spend a lot of time in accounting. Did you spend time in accounting?
No. And that's interesting you say that. So there's a couple areas of the business that, I've obviously been attached to accounting.
Sure.
Kind of at the hip, because we have individual P&Ls, overall P&Ls and all that, but understanding more deeply some of the things that go on within accounting department, within R&D, within product management. Those are the areas of the organization that I've had the least amount of exposure to.
Yeah. So how are you going to unify all those teams? What's the Greg Brewer method?
Yeah. First and foremost, it's getting to know them better, getting to understand the functional leaders in those areas that are not coming in thinking, man, I've got this all figured out. If you guys had just been doing this for the last whatever, we would have all these features and we would have all this and all that. It's more, really coming in to understand it and knowing that they wouldn't be in those positions if they weren't if they were entirely capable of doing them. And it's coming in more of one of the things that I like to do is to understand. And then after I come to an understanding, there's likely analogies or things that I've seen on the sales and operations side for the last 20 whatever years that'll have some similarities. It won't be the exact same, but just like going all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning, just understanding that, okay, I may not have seen this exact thing before. I may not have ever done that thing before, but I can do it. I've got the right people to do it. We can figure this out. It's more about we than I, but certainly it's from the things I will be doing is listening and then helping make adjustments as necessary.
That's great. Well, the we is coming through loud and clear, and even the stories you're telling make it that part is obvious. So let me ask a little bit of a philosophical, maybe a harder question.
Okay.
So they say everyone leaves an indelible mark on the world and the organizations they touch, right? So what do you think the mark is that you're going to leave on Amano when your time is done? What will be your mark? What do you want your mark to be?
Yeah. Couple things. And I appreciate the philosophical question. And I'll go back to the man that I started with, which was Henry Allen. Mr. Allen seemed to have people all over the country. At the time, I was naive enough to think that, man, it's just me. But there were so many people that he fed and that learned from him and that really he gave inspiration to. And for me, I've always said, as many people as he had, probably hundreds of people, and that looked up to him and thought, man, I appreciated his approach on this or on that. Nobody's ever going to say, I love everything about anybody, right?
Sure.
But if I can have one person that when I'm gone and because, companies move on, if something happened, if I got hit by a meteor today, they'd figure it out real quick. But if I can have one person think about me in some way, like the hundreds of people that thought about and still think about Mr. Allen on a daily basis, that would be an indelible mark. That's more from just a feeling aspect. And from a core business aspect, what would be the mark? It'd be somebody that came in, was loyal, was understanding of where we were in the market, helped to guide through a very complex time within our organization, wrap the arms around it and embrace technology, embrace the ability to get things done quicker, to be more efficient in various ways, and ultimately get us to a point where as a company, we have that we're not just, because you can never solely, a company is not a product. So it's, you can have the best product in the world, but if all the people around it aren't unified, that at some point the product alone can't keep you there.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's more of, yes, you have to have a good product and solution, but the people and how that drives. So ultimately, it doesn't matter if we're selling pens or parking systems. If you have the right people in the right seat on the bus and you take care of your customers, we're going to continue to be strong. So it's really just leaving that legacy of day in, day out, continuous improvement, listening to the customer's needs, and making very measured decisions to continue to move down the road in a positive manner.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, what a great answer. So somehow in our digging up, in our backgrounder, we became aware of some activity or your involvement with the Bridge of Unity. So tell us about the Bridge of Unity and tell us about sort of how it shapes your worldview as a leader.
Thank you for that. I wasn't expecting that, but I appreciate that. And I'm glad you asked. So I'll give you a little background on that. Back in 2019 timeframe, I moved back to North Carolina in 2017. In 2019, for the first couple, I like to get haircuts every 2 weeks. And for the first 2 years, it was like, man, I don't know what kind of knucklehead's going to cut my hair this week, and I would go and I'd try to drive 30 miles trying to find a haircut, and I'd drive here. And finally somebody was like, have you ever gone to see Sly? And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, Sly's a barber downtown. So I go down there and I walk in and I'm like, Sly's, he talks a lot. He's real loud. He's a black man. And I'm like, I don't know does he know how to cut my hair? And I look around, I'm like, well, there's a lot of white people in here. And so I'm like, he must. So I get my hair cut and I'm like, man, it's a really good haircut. So I kept going back to Sly and I kept understanding like, there's something different about this barbershop. These people, there's white people, there's black people, there's Hispanic people, there's old people, there's young people, and everybody's talking about, and Sly's kind of leading the way. They're talking about like things that are happening in our world. And as you remember, like in 2020, a lot of things were happening in our world. And they would come up in there and there'd be people from all different types of political affiliations, not arguing with one another, actually talking to one another, having conversations with another human being about a topic that seems to matter.
Yeah.
And maybe they feel a certain way about it. Maybe they feel a different way about it, but there was something healthy about what was happening in that barbershop. And then Sly had an idea and he said, Greg, or didn't say it directly to me because we were close at the time. He put out on Facebook like, hey, anybody wants to come down and talk about possibly starting a community organization, be down at my barbershop X day, X time. And I'm like, okay, I'll go down there. Just I like listening to him at the barbershop. So he starts having a conversation about what his vision was. And I was like, I could get behind this. Well, at that point, there was 23 of us in the room that all said, we're getting behind this. Well, I was the last one to leave that night. And so I looked at me, and at the time, again, he was just my barber. And he didn't even remember from 2 week to 2 week how to cut my hair because he cut so many people's hair that it was like, so for me, it was like, I really always liked somebody that really understood my hair. My mom cut my hair when I was a kid, so I never trusted anybody exactly. But long story short, he told me that night, he said, you see all these people in the room? There's a sign-in sheet. He's like, there's 23 people on this list. He said, 6 months from now, they won't be a handful. He said, in a year from now, there won't be but a couple of them. And at the time I'm thinking, okay, I didn't have any frame of reference. I'd never been a part of a nonprofit organization. So long story short, I was one of those people that ended up staying, a handful of us at first. And we went through a process of defining what our organization even is, and came up with a mission statement for the organization. So, we exist to promote positive dialogue that seeks to unite the local community in peace, love, and equity. And then I'll say, got our 401c3, and we decided that what our little town needed was a Juneteenth festival. And I never knew what Juneteenth was until I moved to Texas a number of years ago, and I heard people talking about it, and I dug in to find a little more about it. And then through the course of coming into this organization, that really dug deep into understanding. But our organization, although we do a Juneteenth event, it's absolutely not an educational event. It is a community event that centers around the things we can all agree on. We can't all agree on politics, so that's one thing we don't talk about. We may have our own ideas, but it never, like if you want to come hand out, get people to vote, do that somewhere else. If you want to come carrying either signs from either side, go do that somewhere else. We're here to talk about food. We're here to talk about music. We're here to talk about fun. And those are the things that as an organization that we've really centered on. And this was our 5th year of having a Juneteenth event, just finished up in June of this year. And we've had folks as far away as New Orleans that have come to be a part of our music situation. We have roughly, it costs us about between $10,000 and $15,000 to put on this event. So it's a 1-day event that happens once a year. And we have some really loyal sponsors that have helped us that we absolutely couldn't do it without. And, but a lot of that support we have a couple local, but the majority of our major support have been corporations that like what we're doing and that get behind our message. And we that, so and I'm very passionate about it, and I enjoy that. I think it helps for me, and it helps me. It's like sometimes I think, man, do I need to do that and also be a coach? I mean, I coach wrestling, other things. And have I stretched myself too thin here? Got all kinds of things going on. But for me, it keeps me grounded. And I think all those things help each other and ultimately help to hopefully leave that mark that you talked about earlier. Because for me, I want to leave a mark at Amano and I want to do my thing there, but I want to leave my mark as Greg Brewer. And Greg Brewer was a nice enough guy who tried to help others along the way.
Yeah, who cared about people and wanted to bring people together and build a community. I can hear it loud and clear. That's good stuff. So I was poking around on the Facebook page for the Bridge of Unity, and it looked like you were all having a lot of fun for sure. Roasting hogs and all kinds of stuff. So you might have to ask Parker to support you next year. I might just
be fantastic.
I might just throw my hat in the ring with you, Greg. That would be great.
Amazing.
Add me to the list for sure. All right, let's do this. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's get into the lightning round. And it's not really a lightning round. It's 6 questions that I ask everyone.
Okay.
And I have a feeling I'm not going to stump you on some of the questions that I've stumped others on. Okay. So the first question is, what phrase are you known for?
Nothing happens till somebody sells some.
I love that. Okay. All right, good. So you alluded to one thing, but maybe there are other hard things that you've done in your life. So what do you think the hardest thing you've ever done in your life?
Hardest thing I've ever done in my life. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life is watch my father die while his leg was chained to a bed.
Yeah.
In a prison hospital.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'll bet that was hard. And I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the hardest thing about your parking job?
The hardest thing about my parking job is keeping and realizing that absolutely nothing that I can encounter is going to be as hard as I think it is when I look at it. Whether that's an angry customer call, whether that's a situation, it's knowing that when I get on the other side of it, my wife often reminds me, you've said this 1,000 times, it's never going to be as bad as you think. And it never is.
Yeah. My wife tells me it's not that bad. You're just living it. That's come up a million times. So that's good. All right. It's never going to be as hard as you think it's going to be. I couldn't agree more. We build these huge clouds of fear, and it usually turns out okay if you come at it with the right heart.
Yeah.
So if you could wave your magic wand and fix one thing in parking, what would it be?
Let me break out my magic wand to fix the fact that you can't replace everything within a parking facility's needs with technology. Can you fix a lot of it? Yes. But there's always a people aspect that sometimes with the pressures that we all feel in every one of our organizations about streamlining and about AI and about this and about that, if you totally remove the people component of that, the whole house of cards falls. And I think there's a real pressure in the parking community at large that we can do it all with technology. While we can do a lot, it still takes people to help manage that. So the magic wand would be to wave and to get people just to knock them back into their senses that we still have an interaction with a human being that is important.
You are absolutely preaching to the choir on that point, Mr. Brewer, for sure. You certainly can streamline and you can do a lot of really interesting and magical things with technology, but you still have to have humans somewhere down the line. And for us in particular, when they really get stuck,
Yeah,
you need a human.
that's right.
But,
And can you have AI tell you what likely you should respond to a customer based on what they're saying? Sure, you can.
yeah.
But yeah, there's an element there that only a human can get a customer to feel.
Yep. No question. Okay. So on the lighter side, when you're not parking cars, what do you do for fun? You said you're a wrestling coach. You probably coach basketball and baseball and all these other things. So what do you do for fun?
Yeah. So I love a number of things. One thing, I have a collection of one wheels. These I don't know if you've seen what you've probably seen them rolling around with you.
Is it like a surfboard with a wheel in the middle of it, or like a skateboard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, yes. You described it. Goes roughly 25 miles an hour.
Goodness.
I'm almost 50, be 50 next year, and I've fell way too many times. Um, gotten for. And people ask me how much does that one wheel cost? I said it costs your whatever your maximum amount of it costs because you're going no matter how good you are. But so I like riding one wheels. I like feeling exploring things, small smells. I love hiking. Like being with my family. Got dogs, cats. Family's very important to me. Just a fun fact is I like the notion of treasure hunting, finding buried treasure or finding some hidden treasure somewhere. They're just fascinating. So those are the kind of weird things that I like. I enjoy. I do enjoy wrestling. I wrestled amateur wrestling in high school and had a little small stint in professional wrestling that for another day. But I love watching kids and helping to some of the same mentality that I put into business. I do with kids, and that's just, being there for them, listening to them and helping them make better decisions if I can.
Yeah. Being there, Mr. Allen. That's a good one. I love that. Okay. And so last question is, and you can be proud of your family. So you could set that as the default, but what are you most proud of?
Most proud of that spans the whole horizon, right?
But of course, I mean, you default to family, but like, what are you most proud of? Like, what gives you the most pride?
Well, and I don't, not just, well, you kind of pose the question. So it's almost like it's going to sound like a brag, whatever you say, right? And if anybody knows me, I don't like to brag. I like to let others get the glory. But for me, if one thing that I am proud of, I'm proud of the fact that I came from pretty humble beginnings and I've listened to people along the way. I have latched on to mentors when I've had them. I've listened to the good. I've tried to throw out the bad along the way, make decisions and no matter whether it's a bad situation or a good situation, find the good in it and use that to help me move down the road to be a little better tomorrow. And that's what I'm most proud of is the fact that I could have found all kinds of things to blame things on as to why I didn't do this or why that didn't happen or why that. And I'm proud to say that I've moved on, and I'm hopeful that my kids will be able to pick up on some of that, and that I don't just spoil them too bad where they think everything's just going to be handed to them. So but really it's just proud of staying grounded too, through all those things, realizing that, we all put our pants on one leg at a time and no matter what we're doing. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. You certainly are grounded. I've seen it in action where you do not like the spotlight. I appreciate that humility a lot. I'm sure it's going to go a long way towards your legacy as a leader at Amano. Congratulations for that. So I said that was the last question. That's the last question of the lightning round. Is there something that I didn't ask you that you wish I had asked you? Like something you want to get out there?
No, well, I guess if I had to say something to just get out there, one thing that I've never hidden from, and I've actually probably sometimes when salespeople are in the room with me or ops leaders and we're in front of a customer, they're probably like, will you please shut up talking about that? One thing I'd like to get out there is anybody that did go through some bad times with Amano directly. And there's a lot of them. We had a lot of customers and we lost a lot of customers back because of some of those things that happened. And many employees that were with us during those times, they went and found greener pastures or looked for greener pastures and they moved on. We had customers that did the same thing. And while we'll never be perfect, I encourage people to let go of and it's sort of it's been my mantra in life to let go of baggage. And if you hold on to any kind of baggage, whether that's where you came from, something that's happened to you, if you hang on to that baggage, the only person that you're really hurting is yourself. So I'll encourage people, let go of that. If you have any perceived or real baggage from the past, give us a chance. Let us show you that we're different and we'll make it, we'll make it where you can't say no. I've always said, and I had to be proven at some point back in early days of Amano One that it was what we said it was. It had to prove it to me. It had to prove it to we have to believe in it first. So I'll encourage anybody that does have baggage from the past, reach out. If you want to talk about it, if we want to give us a chance, don't drag that baggage because that gets heavy.
Okay. All right, good. I think, actually I think that's a great place to wrap it up. So thank you for sharing your story. I knew your story was going to be a good story. I loved it the first time I heard it. I loved it even more the second time I heard it. I appreciate your insights and your passion. How can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you today?
If you want to get a hold of me today, you can send me an email at greg.brewer@amanomcgann.com.
Yeah. Okay. And they can probably find you on LinkedIn as well, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn. Yep.
Okay. All right. Greg, thank you. And I wish you well in your new job and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap on this episode of Harder Than It Looks, Parking Uncovered, presented by Parker Technology. Please leave us a review if you liked what you heard. Make sure you tune in next month as we continue to uncover tips, tricks, and best practices to manage what we all know is harder than it looks, parking a car. Bye for now.